In this part, we're going to talk about the layers in Rhino. If you remember from the previous sessions at this window, we have placed the tab of layers, as you can see. And usually when you open a file in Rhino, you will be given some layers by default. However, they might not exist, since we can delete the existing layers here. Or here we can add new layers to our scene by clicking on new layer, and then we can assign the name. For example, I name it wall. Then I add another new layer. I name it window, tree, or door, or whatever. And the layers are usually similar to AutoCAD. But later, if you wanted to modify the name of the layers or just rename them, you can right click on them and then click on rename layer. Then it gives you access to rename your layer, like trees. But this is not all. Rhino provides you with the sub-layers as well. For instance, consider the walls, and then suppose that we're gonna divide them into two parts, to interior and exterior walls. So we can create new sub-layers for the wall and then associate them to the exterior and interior walls. And this is what that AutoCAD doesn't have. INT is interior. Actually here there's a point, we're gonna add another new sub-layer for the layer of the wall, but before that I should select wall, not the interior. So the interior itself is the sub-layer of the wall. So right now the sub-layer is the sub-layer of the interior, not the wall. So I click on the wall and then I click on new sub-layer. Then we can have our another sub-layer or the counterpart of the INT, which is exterior. Let's talk about the options and the settings of the layers. For example, their colors. Here we can specify the layer color like gold, and then the sub layers you can choose, for example, brown. And then for the another sub layer, which is exterior, you can choose dark gray. And then green for the tree. You can customize the color layers, the layer colors actually, and you can turn them on or off, and also the line type, as you can see. Here we can click on it and then specify the line type like continuous, border, center, dashed, dots, or hidden. But how do we can add the existing lines in the scene into the layers? For example, here I want to select these walls in the scene, the top view, and then add them to the layer of the wall. Similar to AutoCAD, I can select them, and then I open the layers. Then I'm gonna transfer or move all of these walls to the wall layer, and then into the exterior wall, for example. Then I select the interior walls individually or separate from the exterior ones. Interior, very well, or consider these as our trees, for example. I select them, then I associate them to the trees by this way. Or for example, when you want to sketch a line from scratch, at the beginning of the project, for instance, I'm gonna add another tree. They will be added to the default layer, while I can associate a new layer. For example, I choose the trees as my default layer. Check this out, trees is checked. Then whatever I draw or sketch can be controlled from the layer of trees. In the continuation, I'm gonna sketch interior walls. I set INT as my default layer. Then whatever I sketch will be considered as the interior wall. So at the first case, we have already sketched our lines that we can select it and then specify the layer, or at first we can specify the layer and then sketch our curves. That in both approaches, we can specify the layers. For example, consider these as the void of the upper levels. I want to assign one of these layers to this. Let me rename it. Then I name it void by this way. Let me modify the line type, for example, hidden lines. Then I want to assign the layer to the voids. Check this out, the color is applied on, which is blue. So this shows that this is a void. But if you want to adjust the type of the hidden lines, here in a standard tab, and then in options, let me open it. After that, here in line types, as you can see, let me check the name. It was hidden, as you can see. Here we can specify the line type scale, just like AutoCAD, that it enables us to specify the line type scale of the lines. For example, 10. Let's check it out. I should maximize it. For instance, 100. Well done. This is better and satisfying. So it is refreshed and the scale is proper. But let's talk about the options and the tips and tricks and points of the layers actually. Here, if I right click on the layers, we will be provided with some options here that some of them are very useful and practical that you should know. For example, one layer on. This would isolate the layers. For example, I have right clicked on interior. If I click on it, it isolates these walls and then hides the others. So we can focus on it and then work on it. But if I want to unhide, I select all and then I show them and they will be shown. So we can isolate your specified layer by using one layer on. And then for showing the other layers, you can select all and then show them. Others are clear, delete, rename, new sublayer, new layer. And as you're concerned, rename enables you to modify the name of the layers. But another practical option here is select objects. That if we want to select the objects or the content of a specific layer, we can click on select objects. For example, I may want to select all of the objects or the curves which are placed in the layer of wall. I right click on it and then I click on select objects. Check this out. And then they will be selected. So again, you can right click on each of the layers you want and then you can select your objects and then click on select objects. However, there is another approach for selecting the objects within the layer. Suppose that you haven't enabled the layers tab. You can open the layers here from the bottom. Then you can right click on each of the layers like trees. Then you can click on select objects. And this approach is more faster than the previous one. So we can get access to the objects within the layer. And another point that can be interesting about the layers is the filters actually. Check this out. For example, in the first item, we can choose to show all of the layers. The next one is on layers. So if a layer wasn't shown, it won't be visible here in the list. For example, I hide the trees. Then if I choose on layers for filter, as you can see, trees is not visible. So only the shown layers are visible here. Again, on layers, all layers, it shows all of the layers. Or off layers, check this out. The layers which are hidden. Or for example, I hide void and also trees and then I set it to off layers. Right now it shows that these two layers are hidden. Well done. And the next one is locked layers. Let me show all of them. Here if we lock some of the layers like trees, then we won't be able to select them from the scene. Check this out. Since sometimes we need to have some fixed objects, we don't want them to be selected or we want them unselectable, so we can lock them. Then we can get access to the locked layers from the filter by this way. And the next one is unlocked layers and then layers with objects. And unlocked layers is clear, but layers with objects is great too, or empty layers. Here if I choose to show the empty layers, as you can see, these layers don't have any objects. They are empty, while other layers which are hidden have got objects within. So if I choose to show the layers with objects, as you can see, inside these layers we got some objects, curves or lines or whatever. And the selected layer and the filtered layers which is not important. Very well, these were the most useful options for the layers, and at the end part of the session I'm gonna tell you another point and then finish the session. When you have a layer which got sub layers, we can hide or turn off the sub layers individually. Check this out. But if I turn off the main layer, it turns off the sub layers too. Here actually we cannot turn off the parent of other current layers, the default layer. Let me try another one. Again, I turn off the wall. Here if I turn off the main layer which is wall, it turns off the sub layers too, since the sub layers are dependent to the main layer. So guys, don't forget to practice the layers and their options, since they got practical usages.